Thank you, Ranka. Thank you, Boyana. Thank you, Pratik, for the opportunity to speak with all of you today. My name, as Ranka mentioned, is Miriam Stankovich. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you from shaping national AI strategies and regulatory frameworks to designing capacity building programs and training public sector leaders. I've had the privilege to work across over 40 countries, spanning Europe, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. But the Western Balkans region holds a special place in my heart. I was born and raised in North Macedonia. So being here isn't just professional, it's deeply personal. And I'm honored to contribute to the future of AI in our region and in a region I care about so much. Today, I will present a framework for understanding and building the competences needed for an AI-ready public administration. And next slide, please. I'll walk us through three core pillars. Next slide, please. We will be discussing skills and competences. So the differentiated skills and competences required across roles from policy and legal to technical and leadership, the tools and pathways for training, reskilling, and institutional readiness. And finally, we are going to touch upon cross-sectoral collaboration, both within and beyond national borders. Now, these reflections draw from emerging practices in the Western Balkans. I have worked in a number of countries in the Western Balkans, and also insights from my work with UNESCO and the International Telecommunication Union, as well as our recent policy brief on AI capacity building in the public sector, which highlights both progress and persistent gaps, as many of you have noted in the Menti that Pratik shared with all of you. Next slide, please. Basically, what we are going to do is we are going to do a deep dive into skills and competencies across roles. So I'm going to discuss policy and legal roles. So let's look at policymakers and legal professionals. So this is the first set of roles that we are going to look into in terms of AI competencies. Now, these roles require an understanding of how artificial intelligence intersects with public law, with human rights, and administrative accountability. Now, these people, like lawyers, legal experts, they need to be able to anticipate governance gaps. And many of you indicated regulation, legislation as a barrier to inclusive and sustainable AI governance in public sector administration. For instance, when automated decision-making system impacts eligibility for services or for benefits, entitlements, social benefits, you need to be able, legal experts need to be able to ensure that human rights safeguards are embedded from the outset. And here there is a number of good international practices. One of the best international practices in this regard is the framework developed by the Dutch Ministry of Interior. It's a fundamental rights impact assessment framework, which is used by the Dutch government when assessing how the introduction, development, and implementation of an AI system in public service delivery would impact human rights, looking at the policy design and the whole AI life cycle. Now, in countries like North Macedonia, in Serbia, where artificial intelligence is being used to support investment promotion or automate case processing. These gaps in terms of legal and policy competencies can lead to over-reliance on vendors or blind spots in oversight when implementing AI systems. Then we have another set of roles. Those are technical roles, and technical roles need to go beyond conventional system administration or procurement. And now AI engineering in the public sector requires familiarity with model evaluation, data governance, which was mentioned numerous times, cybersecurity, and life cycle, AI life cycle risk management. Now, in my recent work with government CIOs, Chief Information Officers, and digital leads across the world, many reported that their institutions do not employ data scientists or machine learning engineers in-house, and they rely on short-term consultants, and this might impact the government's ability to adopt or govern AI systems autonomously, especially when dealing with vendor solutions or sensitive citizen data. So you need to be aware of these challenges. And then leadership roles. This was also mentioned by previous speakers and by the participants. So ministers, agency heads, permanent secretaries, they must develop skills related to strategic foresight. They need to have adequate digital literacy, AI literacy included, and also change management skills. And their responsibility is not to code, but to make informed decisions about investment. So who is going to be hired in order to develop the system, institutional design, how are we going to design the AI system, and also the public value, as Pratik mentioned, user-centric services, right? So when we design services, we need to know, we need to have in mind who are we designing these services for. Now, our research shows that 30% of senior civil servants could articulate the expected impact of artificial intelligence on their sectoral strategies. And there's also research done by the OECD and the World Bank, where similarly these reports have flagged a leadership literacy, digital literacy, and AI literacy gap, particularly in aligning AI deployment with values such as inclusivity, sustainability, and social equity and human rights. And then the cross-functional or boundary spanning roles, and I have worked with the government of Ukraine, for example. They do have, they are developing, working on AI governance advisors. Some governments are putting out and algorithm auditors, data protection officers, and transformation leads. Now, in short, I would like to say that AI readiness is not a generic skill set, as already mentioned. It is a role specific, it is context dependent and governance linked. And now, since I'm walking the talk, I like to speak in very specific terms. Next slide, please. When we talk about privacy, policy and legal roles, let's start with the basics. So when we look at these roles and, just tailor who we are going to hire in terms of supporting AI initiatives in our agency, we need to think about how does AI actually intersect with the regulation, with the law of the country. Think about a government agency using an AI tool to rank job applications or allocate welfare benefits. Now, these decisions, they need to respect public law principles such as fairness, transparency, accountability, and due process. Now, if someone is denied a benefit because of an algorithm, AI algorithm, which is used by the public servant, they should be able to understand why and challenge it. So legal experts need to know how to assess AI systems just like any other public decision-making process. Now, AI can create governance blind spots if we are not careful. Take, for example, an automated system that determines who gets access to social housing. Now, what happens if the data it relies on is biased or outdated, as Pratik mentioned, or if there is no way for someone to appeal a bid decision because it was made by an automated system? These are governance gaps, these are regulation gaps, and we need to think about that. Now, instead of waiting for problems to surface, we should be embedding safeguards from day one. Let's say a city wants to use facial recognition in public transportation for safety. Now, this raises serious questions around privacy, surveillance, and discrimination. So we need to be aware, even though this will streamline transportation, transportation needs in a city, it also, when you design the system, you need to be aware of the challenges that come with the implementation of such a system. So you need to consult with communities, you need to put limits on data use, and you need to make sure people have real choices. And finally, and this is a big one, AI is not just an IT upgrade. It's not like switching to a new email system, but too often that's exactly how it's being treated. So a public sector agency might implement an AI system without realizing it comes with new risks. So you need to be aware of this risk. That's why we come in here to, share our knowledge and experience working with different entities across the globe, how things are being done, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities. Now let's dive into technical roles. Next slide, please. So when governments use AI in public services, say to detect tax fraud, as Pratik mentioned, or prioritize job training applicants, they need to know the model is working fairly and accurately. So that's what model evaluation is all about. It's not just does it work, it's also does it work for everyone? For example, does the model perform just as well for rural populations as it does for urban ones? Are there any biases within the model? Now, that's why you need technical roles. Good AI needs good data. This has been already discussed, no surprises there. But in the public sector, that also means knowing where your data came from, how the data is being processed, and who has access to the data. Imagine using education records to predict student success using AI. How do you make sure that the data which is processed, which is highly sensitive, private, is not shared inappropriately? Data governance and cybersecurity in this case also comes in handy, and it should be applied through the whole AI cycle. And here's a tough one. Many governments simply don't have the in-house talent needed to manage AI properly. So they might not have machine learning engineers or data scientists on staff, which means they often rely heavily on private vendors. That can create long-term digital dependency. So when you design these systems, you have to be very careful who you bring. You need to work with trusted vendors if you do not have the in-house expertise. Leadership roles, next slide, please. When it comes to leadership, it's not enough to react. We need to anticipate. That means strategic foresight. How will AI transform, for example, if you're a minister of health, how will AI transform healthcare delivery, public safety, or transportation in 5 or 10 years? For example, if predictive analytics will soon drive resource allocation in hospitals, how do we prepare now? Regulation, budgeting, workforce planning, so we are not caught off guard. So these are the things that you don't need to be a coder. So ministers do not to be coders, they do not to be IT experts, but they do need to understand how the system work. And digital literacy means being able to ask the right questions. If your team proposes using AI to improve tax compliance, do you know how to assess whether the data inputs are biased? And so on and so forth. So AI might promise efficiency and cost savings, but those can be the only goals. We also need to ask, is the system inclusive? Is it sustainable? How much energy it uses? Is it fair? For instance, if a city deploys AI to optimize traffic flows, we also are considering the needs of pedestrians, cyclists, or those with disabilities. And then we dive into the cross-functional roles. I have already touched upon these. Next slide, please. So these are AI governance advisors. They can be dispersed throughout the ministries, or they can be centralized. Then algorithm auditors, data protection officers. Many institutions have those, and also transformation leads that work across agencies. And then the issue of institutional readiness, next slide please, is also very important one. Now let's talk about what it really means to be AI ready as a public institution. It's not just about offering a few online courses or hiring one or two data scientists. It's about building an ecosystem of competencies that are role specific, context aware, and grounded in good governance. Now, this goes way beyond generic digital literacy. For example, someone working in procurement needs to know how to assess AI risks in vendor proposals, while a legal officer might need to understand algorithmic accountability and transparency, which is super complicated, I assure you, but it can be also explained and understood if you have the right people beside you. Next slide, please. Now, with respect to effective training approaches, this has been already discussed. I'm going to briefly touch upon these. Let's start with relevance. One size fits all training doesn't work, especially not for artificial intelligence. A procurement officer will not need the same training as a data analyst or a communication manager. Instead of generic awareness sessions, we need a role-specific training. For instance, someone drafting AI-related legislation needs to understand algorithmic accountability, not how neural networks work. The key is to design training that's actually useful in the day-to-day work of public servants. We also need to meet people where they are. That's where a modular approach comes in. Think bite-sized learning, not week-long boot camps. A short module on AI bias, another on risk assessment, and another on public procurement of AI tools. These can be stacked and customized. It makes training more accessible and easier to integrate into people's busy schedules. As we know, all of us are very, very super busy. Next slide, please. And then reskilling for evolving roles. This is a huge one, right? So we are already seeing AI change that's the structure of public sector jobs, right? In tax, pension, licensing agencies, frontline clerical workers, people who used to manually process forms or verify documents, are increasingly being replaced by AI-driven platforms. This doesn't mean that these people are no longer needed. They just need to be reskilled. It means their roles are changing. But if we don't plan for that shift, we risk leaving a lot of experienced talent behind. Now, some countries are starting to take action. In Albania and Serbia, there are pilot programs helping clerical workers transition into new roles like data analytics or service design. So we could take this as successful initiatives. Next slide, please. Promising practices worldwide. I already mentioned the Ukraine's initiative, the CDTO, Chief Digital Transformation Officers Campus. This is the CDTO campus is a network of digital leaders across ministries. They offer They offer different types of services and also curriculum and capacity building initiatives across the government of Ukraine, super successful. We have Singapore, the Singapore Skills Future, you can take a look at it, and Finland's Elements of AI, which has been adapted for public servants in multiple countries. So though uptake varies depending on localization and support. What I recommend is a tier job-specific curriculum, foundational literacy for all servants, specialized training for AI procurement, data protection, or service design staff, and strategic foresight modules for executive leadership. We have touched upon key elements of institutional readiness. For the sake of time, I won't be doing a deep dive on this. You already know about interoperable digital infrastructure. This is a conditio sine qua non. Then AI procurement. Pratik mentioned an initiative in Latin America. And another renowned example would be the Ukrainian e-procurement system Prozoro, which has AI modules, and then civil society oversight is done by Dozoro. You can take a look at it. That's a super successful example of how procurement that embraces AI is being used in Ukraine. Culture of experimentation, it goes without saying. I won't be preaching to the choir. And next slide, please. The importance of cross-sectoral collaboration. Why is this? Let's be honest, no government can build AI competence in a vacuum. Public institutions may bring the regulatory know-how and public interest mandate, but they often lack the cutting-edge technical skills or real-time data pipelines that the private sector or academia have. Think of it this way: government might set the rules of the road, but it needs partners to help design the vehicle. And the next slides are just about this. So how governments? So next slide. How governments collaborate with academia. I won't be able to go through all these examples. I would like to highlight an example that comes from my native country, North Macedonia. We launched Vesilka large language model, one of the most exciting examples of academic innovation and public-private partnership is Vesilka LLM, where researchers developed this first large language model trained specifically for Macedonian language, which is considered a low resource language with 4 billion parameters. It performs on par with larger multilingual models while being much more efficient, and it's trained on a high quality, fully Macedonian data set. And this initiative helps close the language equity gap in AI and shows how local academic expertise together with agile government institutions can produce globally relevant tools. And for the private sector, next slide, I mentioned in the chat, so you can see private sector, public-private partnerships, government agencies working with the private sector. But one example that I would like to bring it to your attention is the example of an initiative which is funded by EU for Digital. It's an EU-funded program that works with governments across the region. I think they started working with governments from the Western Balkans in how to use generative AI tool together with Mistral, a French AI firm, to sift through the national legislation to see how well the national legislation is approximated with the EU acquis, with the European Union law. Next slide, please, is about civil society. I already touched upon this briefly. When we think about who holds governments and companies accountable for how AI is used, civil society plays a critical role. Working through the in the Western Balkans and in the region, I have come across BIRN. Hopefully, most of you have heard about BIRN. BIRN has a program on AI, AI literacy and digital safety and digital literacy. And it's a successful example of how civil society holds governments accountable when it comes to the use of AI in public service delivery. And last but not least, international partner support. Next slide. Building AI readiness isn't something countries do in isolation. That's why you have RESPA, but also international partners such as UNESCO. International partners play a pivotal role in shaping both the technical foundations and the governance landscape of AI deployment. And they can help fund and implement foundational infrastructure, but also pilot projects to test AI solutions in real world conditions, as well as focus on systemic capacity building as this initiative is. With that, I thank you for your attention.